Hello and welcome to Newscentre. With me, Parikshit Luthra. After going on a hiring spree during COVID-19, big tech companies are now announcing massive layoffs across verticals. E-commerce giant Amazon is the latest to hand out pink slips to 10,000 employees. Earlier, Meta, Twitter, Microsoft, Netflix, Coinbase, Shopify, among others, slashed their workforce to save costs. Reports suggest nearly 2 lakh people have lost jobs this year, hinting that the COVID-led online boost may be fading. About 48,000 people were sacked in the month of November alone. A funding winter seems to be looming. Fears of a recession and declining advertising revenue is potentially driving tech bigwigs to reduce their workforce. To discuss this further, I'm now joined by Jung Bahadur Singh, Director of Human Capital Solutions at Aeon India. Also joining us is Nishchay Suri, Managing Director at Cornerstone. Thank you very much for joining us. Jung Bahadur Singh, if I can begin with you. According to layoffs.fyi, a website which tracks layoffs in the tech sector, 120,000 jobs have been lost very recently. Do you think this harsh winter will spill over to next year?
Firstly, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be a part of your show today. I think when we talk about layoffs in the Indian context specifically, we need to appreciate the nuance that the Indian IT sector, for example, is made up of, you can say, three segments. You have large multinational global software product organizations and their delivery centers that operate out of India. We have our IT services, which is the likes of TCS, Wipro, Infosys, and then you also have the startup segment. Now, majority of the layoffs that we've been talking about and have been making the news recently are happening specifically in two segments. We're seeing margin pressures and we're seeing a reduction in growth specifically for the multinational global software product organizations. And then we're also seeing the funding winter impact the startup sector in India. As we look at the startup sector specifically, the edtech segment, that is one area where we have seen a lot of pressure as, we went back to normalcy, people started resuming normal life, and, the entire online delivery model also started slowing down. But if you look at the entire Indian IT population, I think the biggest segment of it is employed by what we call as the IT services. So while, yes, it's very, very unfortunate whenever layoffs happen, but when we look at it from an Indian context standpoint, roughly about 5 million odd employees are employed in the IT services. And the IT services segment currently isn't seeing the same nervousness, isn't seeing the same pressure. Recently TCS, Infosys, all of them came out with their quarterly results, and then they seem to have actually beat analysts on their expectations. So in that context, yes, there is pressure on the global stage. From an Indian perspective, we don't see the same nervousness carry over.
Right, but we do, Jung Bahadur, also see a slowdown in hiring across some of the big IT majors in India as well. Nishchay Suri, if I can come to you, I was just reading a report by Third Bridge where Scott Kessler says that companies are likely to spend less on high-tech gambles like virtual reality or driverless cars that may not pay off in the short term. Do you think this would be right in the Indian context as well for IT majors and the startups?
Well, definitely, I would see this as cautious optimism, right, in terms of balancing the short term and the long term. Now, it's important that to remain sustainable, you still continue to invest in the right infrastructure, in talent. And even though we are seeing a slowing down as far as hiring is concerned, there is still growth. So I'm optimistic, and I think some of the hard calls have already been taken in this year. So much of the brunt has already been borne with the layoffs, which are really unfortunate. But remember that this is a global phenomena which we are a part of, and the impact and the severity that we have seen in India is far less than what is expected to be seen overseas in some of the other developed markets.
Right. Nishchay, if I would also ask you about the opportunities for those being laid off. Out of the 120 or 150,000 people who have been laid off across the tech sector in the world over the last few months, what would be the impact on India and people who are being laid off? What kind of opportunities or what lies ahead for them?
The one big message I have is you have to continue to remain relevant, right? Given the half shelf life of skills, it's important that every individual take the responsibility and ownership to continue to remain relevant, which is invest in their upskilling. That's my first golden message, that given that there is a flooding as far as the supply chain is concerned of talent, you would have to try and work harder on differentiating yourself. And there are still opportunities across sectors, so it's not to say that there is no job growth. The people are still hiring. A lot of the consulting firms have recently declared again hiring a number of individuals in hundreds. So my message would really be that organizations are going to be investing a lot more in upskilling and reskilling their own staff, given that they would have to remain relevant given the restructuring or remodeling of their businesses. And equally so, I think the ownership must fall upon individuals and employees, and even those that have been laid off, to not lose hope, to remain confident, and continue to invest in themselves during this period, because we know there is always demand for good talent.
Right. Jung, if I can come back to you, across the board, all the companies which have recently laid off employees, be it Amazon, be it Meta, be it Coinbase, all of them have made two specific points. One, they overhired during the pandemic. And secondly, uncertain macroeconomic environment. If I would ask you to elaborate more on which are some of the roles within the tech industry which are likely to be impacted more. We've referred to some of them during the course of our discussion. Give us a sense, because there would definitely be some roles, some aspects of the tech business which would be probably redundant in the short term. Where do you see that redundancy in the system, in the Indian context as well?
Sure. So I think the way to look at this is that naturally layoff is the last resort that any firm takes, especially when it comes to, because there's always an associated emotional and a human context to it. Having said that, if you actually double click on the layoffs that are happening, organizations are organizations are looking at business from two lenses. One is they are identifying areas wherein there is no direct impact in terms of sustainability of the business itself. So which means roles which are more ancillary, roles which are more operational in nature. A lot of the layoffs that specifically, for example, happened in the EdTech segment were customer-facing roles or customer service roles, whereas the top talent, especially on the technology side, individual skilled on digital skills, those weren't the roles that were immediately laid off. The other piece is that some of the layoffs that are happening in segments where experiments failed. So, for example, the commentary that's coming out from Amazon or the commentary that came out from Meta, the individuals impacted were from parts of the business where the experiments themselves were not yielding many results. And similarly, when we look at startups, they're always in the race against time to win market share, and that's their innate model, which means that to grow big, to grow fast, they're always experimenting. So those areas where experiments fail, whether be it around building new capabilities or expanding into new geographies, I think those were segments which were impacted the most. But if I were to lay down, say, and be very, very skill specific, I think the last resort was to look at, folks who are building platforms. So folks that we say, for example, full stack developers, front end guys, people who are on the decision sciences. I think those were the roles which were looked at last resort. Right. But roles which are more quote unquote OPEX in nature, roles which are more aligned to customer service, where you could automate to a certain degree, or for that matter, even outsource. I think those were what we're seeing is that those are the roles that were the first to get impacted by the downsizing that we're seeing in the industry.
Okay. All right. My final two questions. We're running out of time. Jung, my final question to you, and then I'll go to Nishchay. what impact do you see on Indian startups? We've seen layoffs across different startups in India. Do you think this trend of layoffs in Indian startups will continue at the same pace? Will it intensify or slow down next year?
Yeah, well, that's $1 million question. I mean, a lot depends on the volatility that we see in the developed economy, because a lot of our startups depend on VC funds for to fund their growth journey. While we are seeing some participation from HNIs in the country as well, their source of fund continues to be the large VC funds. So I think unless the if the situation gets worse in terms of higher inflation in the US, then it is likely that startups which have a very high burn rate, they will continue to feel impact. They will continue to get impacted. But from whatever we have heard from the street and from our conversations with clients, what we understand is that at least the ones which have an established business model, they do have runway well into the next year as well. And which will mean that it's going to be an evolving situation, at least for the next 2 quarters, barring, say, specific segments like EdTech or specific segments, which we've seen, like the crypto market, etc. I think barring those segments, organizations which have been in the market for some time, which were in fact looking at some sort of a IPO participation this year, at least in those segments, we don't expect a lot of layoffs. But yes, if the situation does deteriorate and cost of capital increases further, funds get shrinked off, funds get it gets difficult to get in more funds, then yes, it could get worse as well from where we are today.
Okay. Jung, we're running out of time. I'll put the last final question to Nishchay Suri. Nishchay, what is the big lesson for startups and the IT majors in India out of this global layoffs that we're seeing across big multinationals?
Be measured in the risks that we take. So there was a lot of furor after COVID, given the drive towards digitization. I guess we all hired ahead of the curve, hoping that demand would keep pace with hiring. Now, one big lesson, therefore, is measured risks and the qualification of that risk as we invest. Of course, the message from investors is conserve cash, a drive towards profitability, efficiency. But we shouldn't also have a knee-jerk reaction in terms of short-termism and lay off people soon to realize that we need the same talent 3-4 months from now. So it's really about rebalancing between the talent that we need, between having the cash to run our businesses efficiently and keep equally committed and focused on the path that we built in terms of revenue build out. It is really a marriage of all those parameters that need to align for an organization to kind of live its path.
All right. Thank you very much, Nishchay Suri, Jung Bahadur Singh, for joining us, giving us your view on whether this harsh winter for the tech sector will continue and what is some of the brighter points for those who have lost out in the tech industry right now. Thank you once again for being with us. We're going to take a short break, but coming up, pet owners in Gurugram are worried after the District Consumer Forum directed a ban on 11 dog breeds, which included American Pit Bull Terriers and Rottweilers. We speak to animal welfare activists on the other side. Don't go anywhere.